Blockbuster trade alert. Are the Texans targeting Garrett Wilson? Welcome back to the Texans Better Talk Show. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more daily Texans content so you never miss an update. But all right, let's talk about this potential blockbuster trade that could shake up the Texans offense in 2025. According to ESPN's Aaron Schatz, Houston could be eyeing wide receiver Garrett Wilson in a trade with the New York Jets. But how realistic is it? And should the Texans even make this move? Let's break it all down. So why would the Texans want Garrett Wilson? If you're an NFL fan, you already know Garrett Wilson is a superstar talent. He's been insanely productive, even with subpar quarterback play in New York. And just to put that in perspective, he's played with Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, Mike White, Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle, Chris Streveler, and 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers. And last year, he still managed to put up 101 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 7 touchdowns. In his 3 years in the league, he's put up 1,000 yards every single time, consistently rising above bad quarterback play. Now, put the stats aside, he's also constantly passing the eye test, and he pulled off this ridiculous catch against the Texans last year in the Jets' upset win. I'm sure you Texan fans will remember that because I certainly do. Now imagine CJ Stroud throwing him the ball. The two already have chemistry from their Ohio State days where Wilson put up 74 catches, 1,058 yards, and 12 touchdowns with Stroud as his QB. Now compare that with just 73 receptions, around 1,100 yards, and 11 touchdowns in the 2019 and 2020 seasons combined with Justin Fields as his quarterback. There is scary potential for Garrett Wilson in Houston reuniting with CJ Stroud. Let's also talk about the Texans' current wide receiver situation. Right now, the Texans' wide receiver room is paper thin. Stephon Diggs, well, he's set to be a free agent, and I wouldn't bet on him playing here in 2025. Tank Dell got brutally injured last year, and again, for my money, I don't see him playing in 2025. That leaves just Nico Collins, John Mechie, and Xavier Hutchinson. Now, Nico is solid, but outside of him, not exactly an elite group. Adding Wilson would immediately give the Texans a dynamic 1B to Nico, or maybe even give Nico a run for his money and become a true wide receiver 1. So we've talked about the value that Garrett Wilson provides the Texans, but what would the Texans have to actually give up to acquire Garrett Wilson? And here's where it gets a little bit tricky. Schatz suggests that the Texans would need to trade a 2025 first-round pick and a 2026 second-round pick. And that's a pretty steep price, especially when you consider that Wilson is entering the final year of his rookie deal. In 2025, he has a low $6.5 million cap hit, but after that, you're looking at paying him an extension, looking at around upwards of $25 million per year. Combine that with what you're paying Nico Collins currently at a $24,250,000 contract, and suddenly you're spending extremely big on receivers. But will the Jets actually trade Garrett Wilson? Jets fans are not happy about these trade rumors. Derek Prashak called it ridiculous in a recent article he wrote, and Patrick McAvoy said there's no reason for the Jets to let Garrett Wilson go. And honestly, they're not really wrong. Wilson's only 26 years old, and a first-time head coach, Aaron Glenn, isn't going to want his first big move to be trading away the team's best offensive player. Now, that being said, Wilson has shown frustration with the Jets. He said, quote, "I'd like to be involved, love to make an impact on the game, but people see it differently." When he was asked about his 6 passes for 54 yards on 7 targets, he said, "That's out of my control." Now, the Jets and Aaron Glenn have announced that they plan to move on from Aaron Rodgers, and yet again, the Jets have no clear quarterback plan, at least for right now, and Wilson could want out. Houston provides a much better and more ideal landing spot for Wilson, and Wilson actually grew up in Austin, Texas, and attended Lake Travis High School. But wanting out and getting traded are two very different things. Now let's flip back over to the Texans side and talk about if they should actually make this trade. Now here's where I think we can pump the brakes a little bit. Garrett Wilson is amazing, but you have to ask yourself, are the Texans one receiver away from being a contender? And the answer is not even close. CJ Stroud was sacked a whopping 63 times last season. In the divisional round versus the Chiefs, he was pressured on 51% of his dropbacks. Shaq Mason, the team's right guard, gave up 8 sacks, which was tied for most among guards. And Kenyon Green, the first round pick from, a couple years ago, his pass blocking grade was 39.7, and at one point it dropped to 17. Right now, if Houston doesn't fix the offensive line, Wilson would be running slants and quick outs while Stroud prays he doesn't get hit. Then there's the added opportunity cost. That first round pick could be used to draft a much needed guard in the 2025 draft, or it could be used to draft a good receiver like Emeka Ibuka, maybe Matthew Golden, maybe Luther Burden. They could also sign Kansas City's right guard Trey Smith instead, who will warrant upwards of $25 million a year in the free agency market, and use that money towards a right guard through free agency. Both of these moves obviously become a lot harder if you trade for Garrett Wilson. So the final verdict, there's no doubt that Wilson would be a game-changing addition to the Texans offense, but if Houston doesn't fix the offensive line first, this move does not push them over the top. But should the Texans still make the trade, Garrett Wilson is an extremely talented receiver. Let me know in the comments. Would you go all in for Garrett Wilson, or would you focus on protecting Stroud first, or is there a world in which both are possible? That's all I got for this video, and thank you all so much for watching.